Welcome back. In this module, we're going to be looking at skills you use in engaging fathers. We're going to cover a variety which you can again contact Family Worker Training and Development Program to be able to get the written materials which go with this module. As we have looked at and discussed in the previous modules, the biggest barrier that you have to get over in the engagement in the beginning stage of working with most fathers is the suspicion which they have about what you do, what we do, and what does it mean to get support. For most men, they will reject the idea that support is needed. They do not see themselves as needing support. The benefit of where we need to go with that discussion is that we are there not necessarily to support them, but to support them to support their children. And in supporting their children, in doing something in a more active way that matters in their life, that is where we actually become useful. We become an opportunity. And again, we have reframed that focus from being seen as a threat to actually being seen as a possibility. And that is, if once you've done that, you're going to find that your engagement in your work happens a lot more easily. So what are some of the ways you can do that? Again, be aware of just who the person is. Warm up to them individually. It's all very relationship based at the end of the day, and they need to understand who you are and you need to understand who they are in the fullness of all of the different strengths and capacities and attributes which they bring to their life are fundamental, and you need to be focused on that right from the beginning. Secondly, you need to establish a purpose. Again, it's a key part of relevance, that is actually finding something which is a mutual purpose that you both have an interest in. One of the third things which you're going to find is actually using what I call the engagement triangle. The engagement triangle is made up of three key skills that you can read about in the actual notes. The first one is that you need to create relevance. That relevance is fundamental. What you're working for, the purpose, the usefulness of who you are, and again, how you are benefit to the key relationships that they have in their life is the best way to position the work which you do. The second key skill is actually being a faith builder. You need to be able to communicate in a very simple and honest and authentic way that you believe that that individual, that father, has the capacity, the ability to communicate, to care, to create meaningful relationships within his family's life. If that is at question and you have concerns about the essence of that, then you need to act on that in your own policies and procedures as well. But until proven otherwise, you need to be able to find that place that you build that capacity within that individual in that strengths-based way. Thirdly, you need to be honest and direct. In a lot of male language, they're wondering what it is that you're not saying. What are you holding behind your back? What's the hidden message here? Again, all of that is fed by suspicion. You need to be able to turn that upside down. One of those, the ways which I routinely would do it is that I'm not going to, if I could use the word bullshit to you, and I don't want you to bullshit to me. In male language, this is very important because this creates what I call perceived equality, that we actually can be two people working together side by side, shoulder to shoulder. And it's a very important position to be in, where you are a resource and an opportunity. Again, you are not a threat. Fourthly, it's actually going to be useful to know about solution-focused approaches to the work which you do. Solution-focused approaches in counselling highlight many of the different aspects which we know work well with men. It's actually short-term. It's actually purposeful, with a very clearly defined focus that they own and choose themselves. It actually involves their choice. It's future focused of what you're moving towards, that you actually aspire and hope for. It's actually timely. All of those things are going to be useful in what you do with them. Fifthly, it's actually important to use active tools in engagement with them. Talk about language which is really practical. It's about doing stuff, exploring stuff, making sense, being able to make a difference to. You know, that all of those words are very important. It's not just about understanding or thinking or reflecting, which are more internally focused. It's about being outward focused. That's what men are looking for, is how's this going to help me to help the people that matter? One of those things which we may use are different props. A Coke bottle is a wonderful example of a prop. Because if you're talking about anger within their children and how they respond, or then you're talking about their own level of anger, the important thing is that you can actually shake up a Coke bottle, because that's like all of those emotions which are being shook up in us. And if we just take that lid off, it's going to spew everywhere. The work which we do is about slowing men down and not stopping them. It's about helping them, that they've got a role to play in their children's lives, in helping their children to slow down, to regain control. It's the most wonderful way of framing discipline. Is not about punitive punishment, but it's about helping your child to be able to regain control rather than letting all of that stuff which is inside of them just explode everywhere. And the more that you can attach it to an image, a metaphor, a tool, it actually stays with the person. The beauty of this one is that Coke is so familiar in our society. Every time they go to the fridge, if they've got a bottle of Coke, they're going to remember you. They're going to remember the message you told. And they're also going to remember how they apply that to their children, that it's important, it's going to take time, and helping to take that pressure out of the bottle is really what is at stake here, rather than just responding to the tantrum in a much more punitive way. Another way which you can actually also use a tool is even an elastic band. An elastic band can represent stress, and you can actually talk about how much stress you're under. You can relate this to even physical health and well-being, that when our body remains continually under a level of stress. One is that the actual elastic band loses its elasticity, but it also means in terms of hypertension that we're going to have a high blood pressure, and we're going to actually have a lot more ill effects in terms of our own body. It's a wonderful way to talk to them about the skills of reducing, that we need to find ways in our families that we can reduce the stress. There's going to be very stressful times, but it's actually the skills of reducing that stress, and that's why you're there. And that's really, again, going to be a useful tool that's going to help them to focus why you're a useful asset to work alongside them. Just the final reflection of these skills which you may be considering is really the importance of storytelling. If you look in here and reflect on where is it that men talk the most, they talk stories around the barbecue. There tends to even be in a pub setting, they sitting around a round table and talking about their lives there, or sport, or things which are safe topics they have an interest in. In a similar way, we can use storytelling. And it's the stories that we tell. It may be a reflection that you have on an aspect of your life without abandoning your professional boundaries. Massage some of those stories, that there's a lesson learnt, is a wonderful way of being able to convey meaning, understanding and reflection on life without coming across as if you're preaching. That's one of the suspicions which men have, is that you're just going to preach at them in what they're not doing and what they need to do better. Storytelling goes around that. It comes in the back door. It talks about our lives. It talks about how we can, where things may have worked or not worked, and what we can do differently. It really highlights the choices and consequences which may arise in our actions. Use storytelling. Look for the feelings in the stories. Most men are not going to say, I felt fearful, I felt angry, I felt... They're going to tell you a story which actually portrays all of those feelings. The story is the vehicle which actually portrays men's feelings. And it's important to honour that rather than feeling that you've got to get them to own the feeling, because the feelings are part of the story. And the more that we can respect that and can use it in a more informal way, a relaxed way, it's going to enable them to develop trust and greater respect in us. As you go in putting this module into practice, I want you to just think about the skills that you use. Remember that men do pick up on their environments, that sense of safety of how comfortable someone else feels who may be working with them. You may feel that you're coming across as a professional, but they may feel that you're very removed and you're separate to them, and you may not even trust them. That's going to change their own warm-up in response to you. It's important for you to relax. Until proven otherwise, you assume that they have an interest in the mutual work that you do. Create the relevance. Make sure that you get beyond those suspicions. And give a go at just experimenting and enjoying some of the skills which we've been looking at. To get the most out of this module, I encourage you to actually create 2 or 3 case studies that are very typical of the work which you do, the communities you work within, be it the children, the families, and that actually have a father involved somehow. And I want you to actually use the skills which we've been looking at in the DVD, as well as in the documentation, to identify how your program goes at responding to those fathers' needs. Look at where the strengths are. What are the different skills that you're using, and what is it that are some of those skills that you could do differently?